Big name in show business came out for Kamala Harris, from Oprah to Clooney to Beyonce, and she lost every swing stick. A survey of Ohio voters found Taylor Swift's endorsement actually had a negative impact, with 24% saying it made them less enthusiastic about her as a candidate. Celebrities aren't helping, and why would they? In a country where the big issue now is affordability, outside of, I don't know, Springsteen and a few others, celebrities don't strike people as relatable or in touch. And what their activism mostly activates is eye rolls.
Bill Maher is openly criticizing his own party, the Democratic Party, for leaning into celebrity-driven politics. According to Maher, the push to rely on high-profile figures as part of a strategy aimed at the 2028 election cycle is failing to deliver the results party leaders expect. He explains his position clearly, outlining why this approach is not resonating with voters. Maher's commentary is direct and unfiltered, and the full set of clips is included. If you're not already subscribed, consider doing so, and let's get started.
Stars, they're not just like us. They're just not. They fly private. They have 5 houses all over the world. They give their kids ridiculous names. They make candles that smell like their vagina. They wear crazy amounts of jewelry. They buy castles. They buy towns. They buy islands. They have Shark Tank.
Maher argues that the Democratic National Committee's reliance on celebrity endorsements is deeply misguided because well-known figures do not share the everyday realities of most voters. In his view, celebrities are largely insulated by wealth, status, and access, often living far removed from the financial pressures facing average Americans who are concerned about rent and basic expenses. He points to rising grocery and fuel costs as examples of that gap, saying this disconnect makes celebrities ineffective messengers for a party that presents itself as representing working people. According to Maher, they are not waiting in checkout lines, worrying about medical bills, or directly feeling the effects of inflation in the same way as ordinary households. As a result, when celebrities offer political guidance, it can feel disconnected rather than motivating. Maher suggests that instead of persuading voters, celebrity-driven politics frequently produces the opposite effect. He argues it can reinforce perceptions that Democrats are detached from daily struggles, making endorsements seem like wealthy elites addressing the public from a distance, ultimately weakening the party's broader message rather than strengthening it.
They show up 3 hours late for their own concerts, and people still go. Please, it's okay, you're stars. We like you for who you are. Insulated divas whose talent allows you to pig out on the finer things in life, because we all need something to aspire to. But being talented, which you are, isn't the same as knowing things or having the credibility to advise people on their politics.
Here is where Maher sharpens his criticism. He acknowledges that celebrities can be highly skilled in their professions, but success in film, music, or entertainment does not automatically translate into expertise in politics, economics, or public policy. Maher argues that memorizing lines, delivering a convincing performance, or filling stadiums has little connection to understanding the everyday pressures voters face or the complexity involved in governing a nation. Maher notes that audiences often confuse performance with credibility, mistaking authority portrayed on screen for real-world knowledge and insight. Actors may convincingly play presidents, activists, or working-class figures, but those roles end when filming does. Maher's concern is that politics begins to treat entertainers as if they embody the characters they portray. While that illusion may succeed in Hollywood, he argues it produces shallow messaging in public life, weakening trust and reducing political discourse to fame rather than facts.
You rail against privilege, but you avail yourself of the greatest privilege of all, to remain clueless. Dave Chappelle lashed out at me last month because I called him out for saying there was more free speech in Saudi Arabia than here. Well, I was right. What he said was stupid. America has many problems, including free speech issues on both left and right, but we're real different than Saudi Arabia. If you don't believe me, try opening a lesbian art gallery there.
Maher goes further, criticizing celebrities who lecture the public on politics, while in his view, many lack basic understanding. He argues that fame creates a powerful bubble, leaving well-known figures disconnected from life outside Hollywood and often unaware of realities across the country or beyond it. Surrounded by publicists, approval, and comfort, they can confuse applause with insight. Maher says this distance allows weak or inaccurate claims to be delivered with confidence. To illustrate the issue, he references comedian Dave Chappelle, who once suggested there was more free speech in Saudi Arabia than in the United States. For Maher, that remark reflects a broader pattern: strong opinions resting on fragile facts. When celebrities speak, people may listen, but he cautions that attention is not the same as understanding. Rather than clarifying complex issues, celebrity commentary can blur them, leaving audiences less informed overall about public debates.
Don't know about the real world. So Democrats, it's great you have all the big celebs, but people see them as an arm of the Democratic Party, which they already suspect for lacking common sense. I know the celebrities mean well, and we thank them for having their heart in the right place, but just do you. Do what you do so well. Use your extraordinary talents for the noble cause of bringing relief from the problems that ribbons and pins can't fix. I know it's very important to you that you feel that you're making a difference, so let me assure you, you are. You're making independents vote Republican.
According to Maher, independent voters quickly detect inauthenticity. He argues they understand that many celebrity endorsements are not rooted in lived experience, but instead reflect performative signaling aimed at gaining approval within Democratic circles. To these voters, it feels less like sincere concern and more like wealthy figures seeking praise and social validation. Maher says this dynamic causes Democrats to appear focused on image and spectacle, rather than on addressing practical, everyday issues. Instead of forming genuine connections with ordinary Americans, the party can come across as overly concerned with status, visibility, and recognition from Hollywood. He describes this perception as especially damaging among independents, who tend to value authenticity over showmanship. When voters feel spoken down to by people who have not shared their challenges, frustration builds. In that space, Maher argues Republicans often present themselves as more relatable and grounded, regardless of policy debates. In his view, this cultural disconnect, beyond policy differences alone, gradually pushes independents away from Democrats and towards Republican candidates.
One photo collage of some of your favorite stars and politicians who speak about the need to reduce our carbon footprint, but who are always on private planes. That's right, all of them. If you don't see a celebrity's picture here, it's because we weren't allowed to use it. Or their series got canceled. But all the environmentalists of Hollywood and Washington do it. Their position on climate change is, we must do more to stop pouring carbon into the air, except for me when I want to go somewhere and then I take a private.
Maher then directs his criticism toward what he views as clear celebrity hypocrisy, pointing to environmental activism as the most obvious example. He notes that many public figures present themselves as strong advocates for climate action, frequently lecturing the public about carbon footprints and individual responsibility. At the same time, he observes that when it suits them, these same figures rely on private jets, one of the most carbon-intensive forms of travel. To Maher, that contradiction is difficult to overlook. It suggests that the expectations being promoted apply to everyone else, but not to those with wealth and status. In his view, this double standard erodes credibility. If public figures do not follow the principles they promote, Maher questions why their messaging should be taken seriously. He argues that this behavior widens the gap between celebrities and everyday Americans who cannot afford such lifestyles and already feel stretched by rising costs. Rather than motivating change, he says these contradictions fuel resentment and reinforce the perception that celebrity activism prioritizes image over real sacrifice or accountability.
And Greta, that's who walks the walk. Everyone else is full of shit, and I'm done being full of shit. I can take being a bad environmentalist, because almost all of us are, but I can't take being a hypocrite. Now, I always justified renting a plane because I only used it for work and literally could not get to most of my stand-up gigs on time any other way. How do you think I did it all those years? I said goodnight here at 8 p.m. and was on stage in Vegas at 10. But I don't need to do stand-up, like tomorrow night in Albuquerque.
Maher does make a limited concession. He acknowledges that there are situations where celebrities may genuinely need to move quickly between locations, and in those cases, private flights can be reasonable. However, he draws a clear boundary, arguing that not every trip qualifies as urgent or justifies the use of a luxury aircraft. He notes that many of these journeys could just as easily be handled through commercial travel or even by car, yet celebrities repeatedly choose private jets out of convenience. To Maher, that choice highlights the central issue: comfort taking priority over principle. If environmental responsibility is truly taken seriously, he argues, it would involve at least occasional compromises. Instead, he says the pattern suggests that advocacy often ends where personal convenience begins. According to Maher, this behavior fuels public skepticism, making celebrity-driven environmental messaging appear less like a sincere commitment and more like a branding strategy disconnected from real-world accountability.
Good fly commercial. Why don't they? Ask anyone who tried to get home for Christmas last year. And don't tell me the younger generation is better. They're not. They're just poorer. They're actually worse. This is who they look up to. The family where everyone has their own private jet. And kids love Bitcoin, which, to determine the value of, takes an amount of computer processing that uses more electricity than some whole countries. Kids could have rejected that, but they didn't. They love it. Why? Because they want to be rich. Why? So they can fly private.
Maher then turns his attention to younger generations, criticizing what he describes as performative environmentalism. He argues that many young activists publicly position themselves as defenders of the planet, not necessarily because they live significantly more sustainable lives, but because they lack the financial means to engage in high-emission behaviors associated with wealth. In his view, this kind of moral positioning is inexpensive when it is shaped by financial limitations rather than genuine sacrifice. He adds that the same generation often embraces trends that quietly contradict their environmental messaging. One example he raises is Bitcoin mining, an industry known for its heavy energy consumption and substantial carbon footprint. Maher's point is not to single out young people, but to highlight inconsistency. He argues that it is difficult to claim moral authority on climate issues while supporting activities that place real strain on the environment. For Maher, it represents yet another instance where rhetoric moves faster than reality, regardless of age.
No one can resist it. John Kerry is our climate czar, and he uses a private jet. It's like if the Secretary of Homeland Security smuggled drugs in his butt. People take jets to environmental conferences. If you could run TED Talks on hypocrisy.
Maher makes clear that his criticism extends beyond Hollywood. He also directs it at elected officials who promote ambitious ideals, but fail to reflect those principles in their own behavior. In his view, the issue goes deeper than celebrity inconsistency and is embedded within the political class itself. He argues that Democrats are facing a dual credibility problem. On one side, celebrities advocate moral causes while living in ways that contradict their messaging. On the other, politicians repeat those same themes without demonstrating consistency or accountability through their actions. The outcome, Maher suggests, is a party that appears detached, insincere and increasingly unreliable to everyday voters. When actions fail to match words, he says, public trust erodes and attention fades. Voters are not looking for slogans or symbolic gestures, but for evidence. Until Democrats address both celebrity-driven contradictions and political inconsistency, Maher believes their message will continue to lack credibility.
But sorry, not sorry. I tried to do my part for the environment. I never had kids. The one thing worse for the planet than private jets. It's true, because then they have kids. I had the first generation Prius in 2001. It looked like a Tylenol gel cap. I was always handing my keys to valets who were driving a better car than me. I had the first Tesla in 2010, and honestly, both these cars sucked.
Taken as a whole, Maher's critique presents a troubling outlook for the Democratic Party. He argues that celebrity-focused politics has shifted from being an advantage to a liability, revealing a widening gap between elite voices and everyday realities of ordinary Americans. When celebrities promote values they do not practice, and politicians echo those themes without supporting them through consistent action, public trust erodes. Voters, particularly independents, he says, recognize the performance and grow frustrated by being lectured by people who have not experienced their daily pressures. Maher's message is straightforward. Politics cannot function like an awards ceremony. Image, fame, and symbolic moral gestures do not reduce living costs or ease financial strain. Credibility does. Until Democrats distance themselves from Hollywood approval and prioritize authenticity grounded in real-world concerns, he believes they will continue losing support to Republicans who present themselves as more relatable. The solution, Maher suggests, is not complex. It requires less performance and more listening, along with living up to the principles the party claims to stand for. On that note, we conclude today's video. If you found it useful, consider liking the video and subscribing for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.